there is recommended reading here on chapter 6. You can go purchase this book if you did and read chapter 6, and then we can start our project. Piano keys, alright. Always love a good cat picture. Alright, so what will we do here? You're a web developer who has been hired by a music education company. This client wants you to create an interactive game to help their beginner-level piano students study. Create a piano player with DOM events in JavaScript. If you get stuck during this project, check out the project walkthrough video, which can be found in the Get Help section in the bottom right of this window. Create an interactive piano game. At the beginning of the code, we have variable name assignments for the keys array and the notes array. Variable assignments for the keys array and the notes array. Okay, so there's just a key. There is also a function looping through the elements of the keys array and pushing them to notes array. Yep. We want to get element by the specific key ID, and that will be pushed into the notes array. After the second comment, create a function named keyPlay that changes the background color of the keys when they are pressed down. Be sure to use a .target property in the function because the target is being modified in this case. Be sure to use the .target property in the function because the target is being modified in this case. You can declare the function however you like, but you make sure it's a named function because you'll need it later. When changing a hyphenated style property like background color in JavaScript, use camel case. Second copy, create a function named keyPlay that changes the background color of the keys when they are pressed down. Be sure to use the .target property in the function because the target is being modified in this case. So I think we do need to be able to capture the event. So now that event that is when we can change the style of the background color to be what color? Orange? Let's make it orange. Save. Next, create a function named keyReturn that returns the background color of the keys to the default with an empty strings when the mouse is released on the target. Be sure to use the .target property. So this is supposed to call it key return, taking an event so that we can set their default, the color of the keys, return the background color of the keys to their default with an empty string. With an empty string, so that they're saying if we set the background color to an empty string, it will return it to its original default color. I'm guessing they have some kind of logic that changes the key back to the default color whenever it is set to this empty string. That's what I'm guessing. You can declare the function however you'd like, but make sure it's a named function because you'll need it later. When changing a hyphenated style property in JavaScript, use camel cape. Yep, setting a style property equal to an empty string in JavaScript will return the element to its original style. Okay, I think I did that right. So next step, now that you have created two functions that change the color of the key elements, you must assign them as the values of event handler properties. Create a named function and leave the code block blank for now. This function will be used later on to assign events to the keys. So it should take one parameter. You can call it note. Oh, we should take one parameter. It never said that we had to take a parameter, but it passed in one anyways. Because how else are we going to capture that event element? Anyways, where should we write this? Should this be over here? Write your name function with event handler properties, and they're saying to call it a note that takes in a parameter, probably event, and leave it empty for now. Oh no, they're saying the thing we're passing in is called note. And this function that we're supposed to create is supposed to assign events to the keys. You know what? I'm just going to leave that alone for now. Inside the function, create an event handler that runs the key play as an event handler when a mouse down event fires on any note. Where do we write that? Whoa, there's a lot of steps in this. Let's see. Write a loop that runs the array elements through the function. And this is a fourth. Inside the function, create an handler that runs the key play as an event handler when a mouse down event fires on any note. So when the note is passed in, do I need our target or maybe not? On mouse down event, we want the key play. This doesn't need to be a string. Key play function to be activated. Okay, on any note. I'm going to call this play note function. Inside the function, create a second event handler property that runs the key return when a mouse up event fires on any note. Okay, note dot on mouse up is equals to key return. Yep, I use an on event function and then an event handler function. Then at the beginning of the code, we have variable name assignments for the keys array and the empty notes array. At the beginning, right, we have that keys array. We have this notes array. There is also a function looping through the keys array and pushing the keys elements to the notes array to be assigned a variable name. Now you must create a dot for each loop that will pass the elements in the notes array through your event assignment function. That will pass the elements in the notes array through your event assignment function. So we're running a loop through each element in an array to do what? Elements of notes, so I know we have to do it on notes and go through each of the elements there. We want to perform what function on each element? Pushing the keys elements to the notes array to be assigned a variable name. That's what happened up there. And we have to pass the elements in the notes array through your event assignment function. Event assignment function. I'm guessing we pass the notes into the play note. Now the program knows what to do when each piano has a mouse down, mouse up event fired on it. Run your code and see how it works. Is it going to work? Wow, it does work. Why does... oh, it even changes the color if I just click on the keys. It works. When I click, and as long as I'm holding the mouse down, it changes it to orange, and then when I let it go, just like what this function does. Alright, we did it. Next, there are variables that represent the progress buttons in the song box below that allow students to progress the piano. The next one, next two, next three, and start over change the lyrics and musical notes of the song to help the student play along. In the beginning of the song, the only button the student needs is next one. Because of this, the hidden properties of the other buttons are assigned the value of true. Now you must create events on all the progress buttons. First, create an event handler property with a click event on the next one element. Now you must create elements on all the progress buttons. First, create an event handler property with a click event on the next one element. First, click an event handler property with a click event on the next one element. Next one element. What are the progress buttons? I'm stuck. Remember, the syntax for an event handler property is event target.on event. Okay, let me read this again. There are variables that represent the progress buttons in the song box below that allow students to progress the piano. These variables store the buttons that progress the user through the lyrics. First line, second next line, third next line. Okay. The next one, all of these change the lyrics and the musical notes of the song to help the student play along. In the beginning of the song, the only button the student needs is the next one. Because of this, the hidden properties of the other buttons are assigned the value of true. Now you must create events on all the progress buttons. First, create an event handler property with a click event on the next one. Write an anonymous event handler property and function for the first progress button. The first progress button. So that would be next one. And then on click. And then what do we do to it? An anonymous event handler property. An anonymous event handler property. I don't know what they want us to do. Anonymous. First, create an event handler property with a click event on the next one element. What is it supposed to do? Wait, why does it look like this? Write an anonymous event handler property on the second, third, and this is for the start all over. So here, they also wrote an anonymous function here. So let me try to do something like that. An anonymous function that does what? And that's it. Set it to false. Should we look at the solution now or just continue on first? Let's try one more step and then see if we are actually stuck. To begin modifying the song box, you must switch the progress buttons first. Using an anonymous event handler function, make the following changes to the button that appears after next one is clicked. Reveal the next two button by changing the dot hidden property to make the next two button appear. next one. Using an anonymous event handler function, make the following changes to the button that appears after next one is clicked. Review the next two. Oh, I think we put it into this previous anonymous function. Next two, and change that to be hidden. Wait, we want to reveal it, so this will be false. Because it was true right there in line 35. And then we want to hide the next one button by changing the hidden property to hide the next one button. Okay, so this one will be true. Let's see if that does anything. It changed to line 3. Remember the syntax for an anonymous event handler function. You can hide DOM elements in JavaScript with the .hidden property, which takes Boolean values, true or false. I think it's something like this. Next, click event firing on the next one must change the music notes that guide the piano student through the song. Click event firing on the next one must change the music notes that guide the piano student through the song. Add the following changes to the next one event handler function. So the musical notes change when the button is clicked. To the next one event handler function so that the musical notes change when the button is clicked. Now, what does that mean? Oh, that means to change the content of the element with an ID of letter note 5. Letter note 5. Letter note 5 2D. Letter note 5 2D. Let me look at what they're talking about. There's some element with an ID of letter note 5. Letter note 5 2D. Oh, what happened? What is this? Okay, so in the handler function, we want to change the content of something that has an ID. And to get that, we will need document.getElementID by letter note 5. Let me put that in a string and then change the inner HTML to a D. And then we want to change the one at the 6th to a C. Yep, they said to use the inner HTML property. Let's see if that works. So when we click on this, one of them should change to a C. Where's the one that changed to a D? None of them are a D. Why didn't it change to a D? Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th one changed to a... No, it didn't even change. Nothing changed. Shouldn't be in strings. Oh, okay, it worked. So we had to be in strings. So I'm guessing without the strings, I thought there should be a variable defined as a C or D. Alright, next step. Create another event handler property with a click event on the buttoned element called next to, then assign the property to the value of an anonymous event handler function. Wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm just copying that. What I should be doing is calling it on an element called next to, and when it is clicked on, we want to call a function that will what will it do? It doesn't say anything, so let's leave it blank and wait for the next step. And the next step says, make the following changes to the button that appears when next to is clicked. Reveal the next 3 button by changing the .hidden property to make the next 3 button appear. Okay, so that means we want to review the next 3 button to stop hiding, so set it to false. And we want to hide the next 2 button. So set that equals to true. So that should change. So that means if we click on line 2, it changes to line 3, and line 3 should move to line 4, yep. Once the student has reached this point of the happy birthday song, the lyrics changes from happy birthday to you to happy birthday, dear friend. Make the following changes to the lyrics in the function when the button is clicked. Make the following changes to the lyrics in the function when the button is clicked. Change the ID of the content of the element with an ID of word 5. to deer. Okay, so then we need to do the same thing here, except the ID of the element we are grabbing has an ID of word 5, and the inner element is changed to ear. Similarly, we do the same thing for the 6th word that has an ID of word 6, and change that to just friend. To access elements by their IDs, use GetElement by ID, change the content, use the in the HTML property. Alright, so let's see if it changes. There we go, it changed it on the next page. Now you have the lyrics Happy Birthday, Dear Fry. To finish the line, you must add the end to the song box under the piano. The end element is stored in the last lyric variable. Add a statement to the event handler function for next to that changes the display property of last lyric to inline blocks. Okay. So I don't even know what last lyric is. Let me look at what last lyric is. Last lyric is this thing, an optional column. So let's see what that does. I guess we didn't implement it yet. So now you have the lyrics. To finish the line, you must add the end to the song box. Under the piano, the end element is stored in the last lyric variable. Oh, we spelled it wrong. I spelled it wrong. This needs to be a capital L. Let me see if that changes anything. To inline block. Whoa, it popped up. Alright. So the next step, a click event firing on the second button must also change the music notes to guide the piano student through the song. Add the following changes to the next to event handler function so that the musical notes change when the button is clicked. Add the following changes to the next to event handler function so the musical notes change when the button is clicked. Add the following changes to the next to event handler function so the musical notes change when the button is clicked. Add the following changes to the next to event handler function so the musical notes change when the button is clicked. So they're saying on the next two, we're still on the next two. We want to change the content of the element with an ID of letter note 3 to G. Alright, let me see. This time the ID is a letter note 3. The inner HTML is G, and then we want to do the same thing for the fourth element, and that is set to an E, and then the same thing 2 more times. This one is a 5. We want to change this to a C, and this one, the final one, is a 6. And we want to change this to a B. Alright, let's see if that works. Happy birthday to you. Did it change? No, okay, maybe it's the next one. Yes, I think this is it. GECB. That's what it is. Okay. Cool. Next step is we want to create an event handler property with a click event on the next 3 elements. Alright, the next 3 element, it has a handler property of that's this step, just creating the event handler property, and it will be set to an anonymous event handler function. Make the following changes to the button that appears when next 3 is clicked. Reveal the start over button. Okay, so we need to reveal the start over button, and I see that there's a start over button here. So that's probably referring to the start over button, and to reveal it we need to set hidden to false so that it can stop hiding, and then we need to hide the current one that we have. I wonder what it looks like when you don't hide our current button. Let's see. Does it go up next to each other? It replaces it. It replaces it. Okay, let's see if it still toggles back and forth from 4 and reset if we set it to hide for good. Oh wow, it goes back to line 2, so that was necessary. It's necessary to hide the current button. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else? You can hide DOM elements in JavaScript with a hidden property. We know that. 18. Add the following changes to the next 3 event handler function. So the lyrics change when this button is clicked. Okay, so we need to also do the same thing for the words and notes. This is, we can use the document.getElement by ID, change the inner HTML, and we're going to do that 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first one is by the ID of word 1, and that is going to change the element in here, or somewhere, one of these, word 1, yes, this one, to happy. Well, do we need to? It's already always happy, right? Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Alright, this is don't fund me. Okay, so the first ID is word 1. I don't think we need to change this because it's already always have. Let's do it anyways, and we can check that afterwards if we do need it or not. Word 2 is the next one, and that would be changed to P. Oh no, I lost connection to Codecademy. What happened? Okay, so this one is going to be P, and then word 3 is going to be birth. Word 4 is going to be day. Word 5 is going to be 2. Oh, I pasted in the wrong place. This should be over here. And then this one should be a 2. And then the last ID is word 6. So I'm going to paste it over there. And then also the value. Okay, now let's see. When we reset, it should go back to happy birthday to you. And what we have to do now is to make sure this is also removed. Add the following changes to the next 3 event handler functions so the musical notes change when the button is clicked. Okay, we also need to reset the notes here. Letter 1, 2, 3. We already have some of them done here. 3, 4, 5. So let me copy that. Let me paste it 2 times and just delete one of this. And then just change that to 1. Change that to a 2. Wait a minute, where did it go? Oh, there it went. This one is going to be a 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and there's a 6. I shouldn't have deleted the last one. But anyways, we just have to add one more. And then now we need to change the numbers back. It's a F, F, right, that's an F, F, E, C, D, like we're at the eye doctors. Okay. Wait a minute, there's one more. And that's a C, okay. So now we can get to work on removing that extra end here, so that it properly resets. Now you have the lyrics with the end. That couldn't be right. To finish the line, you must get rid of the end in the song box. Add a statement to the event handler function for next 3 that changes the display property of last lyric box to none. Alright, so what do we do there? Set it to none. Okay, that's all we have to do. I thought we had to remove something. But it's all simply just setting the display to none on the next 3 event. Event target. Yeah, HTML element. So here, right here, we can just set last lyric with a capital L dot style dot display, because display is a style property, and set that to a none. Save. So now let's see if that disappears. Great, we did it. Congrats, you completed the piano player. Play around the piano in the song box to fire all the events. We made that change. Okay, now let's check the solutions to see if we did it right. And then right after we watch this video, we'll end the stream. What's up? There's no video for this? What? They don't have a video? Is it just taking forever to load? Alright, there is a video.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlos. I'm a web developer based in New York, and today we're going to work on a project called Piano Keys from the Web Development Path. Now, in order to complete this project, you should be familiar with JavaScript, how to write functions, how to pass them around and assign them to variables, and how to write loops. You should also be a little familiar with HTML and CSS and how certain pages are structured. We're going to be working a lot with the DOM and grabbing elements, so you should be familiar with what kind of attributes you would find in these elements and what kind of styling attributes they would have as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started in the project. Okay, so at first glance we see our text editor right here with some JavaScript written on it. On the right side with your browser with what looks like a little piano player and some lyrics and notes, a little box right over here on the right. If you click on this directory here on the top left corner of our editor, you'll see all the other files. We should have an index.html file, and we should also have a styling file. We won't be working with them right now, but it would be handy to bring them up so you can actually see how the website is structured. Pay close attention to the ID names, the classes, and what they're wrapped on. So let's go ahead and get started. What are we trying to do here? So we're basically going to be acting as a web developer who got hired by a music education company. And they want us to create a little game to help their beginner-level piano students study. So we're basically going to be managing and manipulating this piano player right over here. So let's go ahead and get started with the first step. So for step 1, at the beginning of the code, we have variable names, assignments for the keys array and the notes array. There's also a function looping through the elements of the keys array and pushing them to the notes array. So here we have an array of all the keys, and we have an empty array called notes. And we're looping through these keys and pushing into the notes array the elements wrapped through the key names with this. So pay close attention because we're not actually passing in string names, we're passing the elements that are being wrapped by that class name. So when we pass document.getElementById for the C key, we find that element here, which is right here, and we pass that into the array. So from there we can actually grab that element and alter it in any way we want. So for our step 1, after the second comment, create a function named keyPlay that changes the background color of the keys when they are pressed down. Be sure to use .target property in the function because the target is being modified in this case. So what we're essentially doing is whenever we click on one of these keys, we want the background color to change so it looks as it's being activated. Right now I'm clicking on them and it's not doing anything, which is what's expected. So let's go ahead and start by writing our function under the variable name called keyPlay. So set that equal to a function. Now it's important to know what will happen here. Well, this function itself is supposed to trigger some sort of event. So we want to pass the event here. So we're going to, let's say we click on a note, the event will be triggered and it will basically be altered through what we write in this code block. So we can write event.target, oops, sorry, I got the wrong line here, event.target. What is event.target? This is basically the property that returns the element that triggered the event. Once we have that value, we can actually use dot notation and call a bunch of other attributes on it. We want to change the color for this, so we have to actually access dot style, which will give us access to a lot of CSS properties that we can change and combine and alter in many ways. So in CSS, what you would find for a lot of styling names, you can be background color, for example, is written right here. You can call position. There will be a little different syntax for these attributes when we're using this kind of syntax, but it's mostly the same. It's going to be working with camel case for this case. So background color, it's actually with a capital C. And there we can assign it whatever we want. You can call it red, purple. I have a light green color that I like, so I'm going to set it to that. Perfect. Now nothing is happening just yet because we're not really doing anything with this function. We simply just defined it. So that's it for step 1. Let's go on to step number 2. Now we're going to create a function named keyReturn that returns the background color of the keys to their default with an empty string when the mouse is released on the element. Be sure to use the .target property. So we're going to do something quite similar. Let's start by writing our function here right below keyPlay. Let's call it keyReturn. Let's pass in the event as well, the event that will trigger this. So when we click on a key, we want it to change the color. When we release the click, we want the color to go back to its default color. These don't really have a background color, so we can just set an empty string for that. So all we need to do is simply write the same syntax we had for the previous function, target.style background color, and set that equal to an empty string, which will basically turn it back to its original color. Perfect. So that's it for step number 2. Let's move on forward. So like I said, these functions are not currently doing anything now. In order to be actually appended to the elements, we got to assign them as the values of event handler properties. So in step 3, we're going to create a named function and leave the code blank for now. And this function will be used later on to assign events to the keys. So it should take one parameter, and you can call it note. So we need the nodes to be able to access these functions. So let's go ahead and start by writing our function and passing a parameter called note. I'm going to call this the event assignment. Set it equal to a function. I'm going to pass in one parameter called note. Okay, perfect. Let's move on to step number 4. So here we're passing on note, which was basically stored in this array. And for each note, we want to pass in these functions so that when there is a click, it triggers this handler. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to first target the note itself so that when it's clicked, we do something with it. So right here in the instructions number 4, inside the function, create an event handler that runs a keyPlay as an event handler when a mouse down event fires on any note. So when the mouse down event fires, emphasis on the syntax here, mouse down, we will fire a certain function. So let's go ahead and start by writing on mouse down. The on-mouse done, it's an event that occurs when a user presses the mouse button over an element. We don't want it to be clicked, because if we click it, then it changes the color, then it will stay as a color. But we want it to just change the background color while we're pressing on mouse down. So now we have to assign this event handler, this trigger, to the function keyPlay. Now we can't simply just set equal keyPlay, since it would just redefine this function here. We actually need to pass in a function that has an event and basically triggers the function keyPlay. So we can do that with an anonymous function. So we're going to pass it in like so, function. And then in here, we pass the function that we want to trigger. So we basically created an event handler that runs another event handler, which targets and this background for that specific note. Perfect. So that's step number 4.
Oh my god. Is that what we did? Line 16. Line 16. We just set it equal to. But I guess the correct way is to... what was it? To create an anonymous function and then pass that event into keyPlay. What did I do? I have no idea why they didn't let me replay this.
But we wanted to just your mouse down. It's handler. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to first target the note itself, so that when it's clicked, we do something with it. So right here in the instructions number 4, inside the function, create an event handler that runs a keyPlay as an event handler when a mouse down event fires on any note. So when the mouse down event fires, emphasis on the syntax here, mouse down, we will fire a certain function. So let's go ahead and start writing on mouse down. The on mouse done, it's an event that occurs when a user presses the mouse button over an element. We don't want it to be clicked, because if we click it, then it changes the color, then it will stay as a color. But we want it to just change the background color while we're pressing on mouse down. So now we have to assign this event handler, this trigger, to the function keyPlay. Now we can't simply just set equal keyPlay, since it would just redefine this function here. We actually need to pass in a function that has an event and basically triggers the function keyPlay. So we can do that with an anonymous function. So we're going to pass it in like so, function. And then in here, we pass the function that we want to trigger. So we basically created an event handler that runs another event handler, which targets and this background for that specific note. Perfect. So that's step number 4. We're going to do something similar in the next step. For step 5, we're going to create a second event handler property that runs a key return when the mouse up event fires on any note. So we're still going to remain in this same function that handles event handler properties. And we're going to do something very similar. Instead of on mouse down, you guessed it, we're going to use note on mouse up. We're going to basically do the same thing. The only thing we're going to change is the function that we're going to call when the mouse is released. So on mouse up, we want to actually invoke the key return function. So all we have to do is pass key return here, pass in the event, and that's it. So that's it for step 5. Now for step 6, at the beginning of the code, we have variable name assignments for the keys array and the empty notes array. There is also a function looping through the keys array and pushing the keys elements to the notes array to be assigned a variable name. Now you must create a for each loop that will pass the elements in the notes array through your event assignment function. So what we're going to try to do now is to basically have give each of these elements that we grabbed access to the event assignment option, so that whenever a key is selected or clicked, it has access to this event assignment option. So it will know that when we press on mouse down, it will target this function and call it off. So with this, we can simply just grab the notes and create our for each loop. All we need to pass in here is the event assignment function we created. Remember, we're only passing the function definition, not the function call. So all we have to do is pass event assignment. That's it for step 6. Let's move on forward. Now I would say go ahead and save this. And once you save it, you can actually go ahead and test it now. Now that we actually have each element being able to access the event assignment, if we click on a note, it should change color and remain as a changed color as we press down. And when I release it, it changes back to its original color. Good, so we're looking fine right now. Let's go on to step number 7. Oh, which I guess we just did, where we tested our code and made sure that each node here changes its color. It also happens with the black keys and all the keys here. Perfect, and you can change the color to whatever you want. I chose this light green color. You can put red, orange, whatever you please. So for step 8, next, there are variables that represent the progress button in the song box below that allow students to progress the piano. The next 1, next 2, next 3, and start over change the lyrics and musical notes of the song to help the student play along. So these lyrics here that we find in these boxes should be changing as we click this button here for line 2. So this would be the first line with all the notes for each section of the lyrics. If we click line 2, nothing happens, but we should be seeing a change of the lyrics, the notes, some of the notes,
and this button should be saying line 3 because we're moving on towards the next line. And of course that didn't happen. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this again. So we're going to be working with changing this button into the next one that we have. So let's look at the variables that were stored for these buttons. We have next 1, which grabbed the element by the ID of first next line. There's next 2, which grabbed an element by the ID of the second next line. Now you might be wondering where are these other buttons? I only see one button right here. Well, let's go to our index.html file and scroll all the way to the bottom. Here you'll see all these buttons here. So we see only line 2 button with the ID of first next line, which would be this one. Now the other ones you are not being displayed because we have an attribute for those elements that's called hidden. These statements are hiding all the progress buttons. We still need the first one, but the other ones are being hidden since we don't really need to access them before getting to line 2. Now this is just an attribute that we can change and manipulate as we access the nodes of the DOM. So now we must create events on all the progress buttons, and first we create an event handler property with a click event on the next one element. So that means we want something to happen. Right now when you click this, nothing is happening. We want something to happen when we click on that button. That button is stored under the variable name next one. So we want an onClick event targeting that element. So we're going to start by writing next one, and there's a property we call nonClick that will basically do some sort of event handling, trigger it when there's a click on that element. Before I jump ahead, this is basically all required for step 8. It isn't complete. We're going to continue writing the handler in the next step. So to begin modifying the songbox, you must switch the progress buttons first. Using an anonymous event handler function, make the following changes to the button that appears after next one is clicked. So we had an event, an anonymous event handler function right here on an event assignment function. We're going to do the same thing. So let's set this equal to an anonymous function here. And inside here is what we want this to be executing when we click on this button, on this element. So first we want to reveal the button after this, the next 2 button here. And we want to hide this button so we don't have 2 buttons that say line 2 and line 3. Once this is clicked, we want this to disappear, and we want the line 3 button to show up. So like I said, they currently are hidden due to this attribute, which is set to true for all the buttons. We're basically just going to flip this so we can change the next button and hide it and reveal it, and then hide this current button, which is the next 1 button. So let's go ahead and first target the button after this one, which is next 2. And let's call that attribute hidden. And instead of saying true, we want it to be false. So it's not hiding, and then it shows up. Next, we also want to actually hide the next 1 button, which is the button that we're targeting. And we're going to set that hidden to equal true. Perfect. So when we click on this button, we will hide that button itself, and we will reveal the button that comes afterwards. Perfect. Go ahead and save this. So now you can actually test it out. When we click on line 2, boom, we change it to line 3. Perfect. Let's go on to step 10. So it's good with changing this button, but we're not only changing this button, we're changing certain things from the lyrics and certain notes as well. On step 10, they're telling us which notes we'll be changing. So next, a click event firing on the next one must change the music notes that guide the piano student through the song. Add the following changes to the next one event handler function, so the musical notes change when the button is clicked. Okay, so we should be getting different notes for certain elements when we click on that button. So we're going to have to change the content of the element with an ID of letter note 5 and letter note 6. Now we're going to be using this method called getElementById. What this does is basically returns an element object that represents the element whose ID property matches the specified string. So keep into account that IDs are meant to be unique. So this makes sense that it should only grab the only one ID that has that same title or same string. Okay, so we're going to add this right below our hiding of the buttons, and we're going to call that with document.getElementById. And then we're going to pass in the string of the ID we want to select. So we already know it's been telling us in the instructions we want letter note 5. Perfect. And now how do we change the actual text that is in here? Well, we can simply call the property inner.html. Inner.html is basically sets or returns the HTML content of an element. So let's say we console log this, we would get the letter C, which is what's displayed right now. So we can reassign what's inside that content by saying .inner.html and set it equal to whatever we'd like. For note 5, we're going to set the note equal to B. And I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this and set our next letter, which is letter 6. We're going to set that equal to C. Perfect. Go ahead and save this. Now, as you work through this, it's good to actually test manually what you're doing. So I would click, let's click on line 2 here, and we see both the button changed, and we also see the notes, the inner HTML for these elements changed from C to D and D to C. Perfect. So let's move on to step 11. So now that we have this following button, which is the next 2 button, we want to continue the next of the lyrics. So we have to create another event property with a click button, similar to what we did here, and then assign that to a property, the property to the value of an anonymous event handler function. So let's go ahead and click select next 2. We're going to do the same event handler triggering for that one than we did for next 1. Assign it to an anonymous function, and that's it for step 11. Moving forward. So what do we want to happen after we click the next button? Well, we want to continue on to the following button. So we're going to have to do something similar than what we did for the next one on click. Instead of hiding this button, we're going to hide the next 2 button now. So let's reveal the next 3 button, which is the button that comes after line 3. So next 3.hidden, we're going to set it to false so we can actually see it. And then we have to hide the current button we clicked so we don't see 2 buttons at the same time. Awesome. Save this again. And go ahead and test it out. And this, when you click this, we should hide the line 3 button, and we should show the next button, which says line 4. Good, so we're doing good here. Let's move on to step 13. So once a student has reached this point of the happy birthday song, the lyrics changes from happy birthday to you to happy birthday to your friend. So we gotta also now change the boxes here for the lyrics. This would be the word 5 element and word 6 element. We already know the IDs of these elements due to them being written here. But like I said, also look into the HTML. I think it's good to actually realize and have a good see very clearly what you're selecting and where is it located in your HTML file. So if we look here, we see that word 6 and word 5 is going to be changing. Word 5 is equal to 2, and we're going to change that to dear. And word 6, which is you, will be changed to FRI dash. So let's go ahead and do that with document.getElementById. I'm going to write a new line, document get element by ID. I'm going to pass in the string that they indicate right there, word 5. And like we did in the previous function, we can set its inner HTML, set it equal to dear. Perfect. Copy paste this line. Do the same, except we'll change the word 6 and we'll change that to RI dash. And indent this here. Okay, go ahead and save that. And you can test it out again. And there we go. We see that the lyrics changed here for the word 5 box and the word 6 box. Awesome. So we can move forward to step 14. Now you have the lyrics, happy birthday, dear Fre. To finish the line, you must add the dash n to the song box under the piano. The dash n element is stored in the last lyric variable. We can see that right here on line 36. The last lyric is grabbed by an element with an ID of column optional. Add a statement to the event handler function to the next 2 element that changes the display property of last lyric to inline block. So let's go ahead and look in the HTML. Where exactly is this element for the last lyric? Let's investigate this a little bit. Okay, we see here a section with an ID of column optional. And it also has a class. Now, if you look at the other sections, there's no classes for this one. And if you're familiar with CSS, you should know that inline block is a CSS attribute. So we can actually look into the CSS and find this ID with column optional. Scroll down a little further down. Right here, we see its display as none, meaning there is nothing being displayed in our page. The display none is actually commonly used with JavaScript to hide and show elements without deleting and recreating them. So you can think of what we're going to try to do now. Once this button is clicked, we want to target that element, which is this one with the ID column optional, and we want to change the display to inline block. So let's go back to our JavaScript file. We'll scroll further down right over here. And at the end of this, we can call that style through the last lyric variable. So let's start by running last lyric. Now we can grab the style of it. And remember, I can directly call .style on this because the element is already grabbed from the document. So I can call the attributes to it. So I can change the display from that and set that equal to inline block. Go ahead, save this. And now you should see the change when we actually click on this button. You see the display of this box actually changed from hidden or none, display none, to display inline block. All right, awesome. So let's move on to step 15. So for this button, we not only want to change the words and display the last lyric, we also want to change certain notes so we don't have to play the same notes over and over again. So we're going to be selecting the following elements with these IDs and changing their HTML to whatever corresponds. So I'm going to just grab one of these lines here, and I'm going to copy paste it 5 times, or 4 times, sorry. And we're going to change the elements that we're actually grabbing. So this would be letter note 3, and we're going to change that to the letter G. This would be letter note 4. We'll change that into E. We're going to grab letter note 5. Change that to a C. Letter note, and I already noticed a spelling mistake, probably out of me. Go ahead and save this. Now you can see, let's say I have a spelling mistake and nothing happens. Just make sure you double check your code when you're writing and you're actually accessing the right element names. If you're familiar with Google DevTools, you can also inspect the site and kind of figure out what is going on with that. So let's go ahead, save that, and now we can test it out on our page. So we see these notes, click on the button, the first change, click on another button, and then we see the final change here. You see that the notes changed, we displayed this box, and we changed the 5 and 6 box or lyrics to dear and FRI-end. Perfect, so let's move on to step 16. So we have one more button to click, and this will be, I believe, the last lyrics for this. So let's create another on-click events on the next 3 button, which is the last button, I believe. So same as we did before, let's go on and write next 3 on click. Perfect. So let's move on to step 17. So here we're going to use an anonymous function, just like we have before, and we're going to change a few things with a few buttons. So let's go ahead and set the anonymous function. Now what do we want to do? We want to reveal the start over button by changing the .hidden property to make the start over button appear. And we also want to hide the next 3 button, which is the button we're actually clicking, by hiding the .hidden property to hide the next 3 button. So we know that the start over button is already a variable stored here, and it's the 4th next line button, basically this button right here. So when we click that, we want to change that button, make it disappear, and we want to see a button that has the start over dialog. So let's go ahead and start by revealing the start over button. So start over hidden attribute, we're going to set that to false, so it's displayed, and then we're going to hide the next 3 button. So we can do .hidden equals true. Okay, great. So go ahead and save that. Run it if you'd like. Perfect, there we go. That hit the button and reveal the following button. So let's move on to step 18. Now we have to add the last lyrics of the Happy Birthday song. So we're going to change the contents of all these lyrics, and we're going to use the same thing we had before and change them to the last part of the lyrics. We'll go ahead and write document get element by ID. We're going to pass in the first word, which is word 1, and change its inner HTML. Assign that to HAP dash. These are all found right here. So there's going to be 6 changes we're going to make. So I'm just going to grab this line here, copy paste it, and let's change these words. Word 2, 3, word 4, and 6. And we'll change the lyrics here. So the next lyric would be PY, then it would be birth. Put on my caps lock here. Birth and A. 2. U. Okay, cool. So now that we click that button, not only will we hide the next 3 button and reveal the start over, we will also change the text found in these elements. Save that up again, and let's test it out. So first change words. That works too. And then boom, we see the change in the rest of the words. And happy birthday to you. Now we see a problem here. The last element here should not be displayed. We're going to fix that in the next few steps. So in step 19, we've changed the lyrics already. Now we want to change the notes. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new line. And step 19 here, the instructions already tell us which ones we're going to select and what we're going to change them to. So let's start another document, get element by ID. Pass in letter note 1. And set the inner HTML equal to the letter F. Go ahead, copy paste this. I'm going to do that 5 more times. And unindent this a little bit. Okay, good. Oh, I just realized I selected the wrong element. It should be letter 1. Letter note 1. And you can fast forward this if you'd like. I feel like you have a good idea of what I'm doing here. Letter 2, 3. Letter 5. And then finally, letter note 6. And let's go ahead and change their notes. So we're going to start with an F, another F. This will be an E. Followed. Okay, go ahead and save this one more time. And go ahead and test it out after it saves. So we can see the changes here. And lastly, boom, we see how the notes changed as well. So we did pretty good here. Remember, we changed these elements here, which are found on here under the lyrics right over here. Okay, awesome. So let's move on to the final step. And in the final step, we see a tiny little bug here. Now that you have the lyrics displayed, happy birthday to you -n, that couldn't be right. To finish the line, you must get rid of the -n in the song box. So this here with a note A. So all we need to do is, how do we hide this element? Well, we simply hide it by adding the display to none. So we just alter the display for this specific property. So all we do is last lyric, style, display, change it back to what it originally was, which is a none. Save that up. So that should hide the last box. Let's go ahead. Oh, I did this typo. It should be last lyric. Let's save that one more time. So now when we get to the last part, we should not see this box, which is displayed when we click the previous button. And there you go. Perfect. So we have finished our piano player here. Now we saw how certain elements can be manipulated. We typed document.getElementById around 1,000 times, so you should be familiar how it works. Remember, we're actually selecting an ID specifically, and the whole purpose of IDs is that they're supposed to be unique. It would be a complete mess if we're selecting by class here for a specific thing. Now you can work query selectors. There are many different kinds of selectors you can use. This is a very basic one, which is very useful. And we saw how we can reassign the text values inside HTML using .inner HTML. We also saw how to pass in, how to create event handlers when we want to set them up to a specific kind of function, we can do them right over here. So that concludes our project, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Yep, thanks for watching, and see y'all next time. What happened? Okay, so form validation is the next video. Yep, let me end the stream.